Cole Cabana compared himself and Benjamin Hall to Donovan and Blake, respectively. That was an interview we did last week. Do you think that's a realistic comparison / productivity ceiling for those two based on what you've heard from the coaches?
Well, first off, don't bury the lead. Plug the story, man.
Yeah, so check out the story we posted this morning of Cole Cabana talking about his injury. Was not all that major, but we will save it for the article. The role that he could have, he's coming for one of those return jobs as well, and I think he could be a dynamic guy there. So check out his comments there. But I did find it kind of funny because, and I'm sure Cole watched Michigan during Blake's freshman and sophomore years, but the fact that he compared himself to Donovan, he said he's quicker and faster, and then Ben Hall is similar to Blake because Blake is I forget exactly how he put it, but basically talking about breaking tackles and dragging defenders. And it's just funny that a year ago we were worried about Michigan not having a short yardage back, and a year later that's how Blake Corum is described by one of his teammates, a guy in the running back room with him. So it just goes to show you how impressive Blake was last season with that. But I think, Cole Cabana is similar to Donovan Edwards in how they'll use him. I think he's going to play in the slot, and he talked about that in the story as well. They're using him there. They're using him as a running back, obviously, as well. And then Ben Hall is just more of a traditional running back, and I thought he looked really good in the spring game. He was one of the most impressive guys out there. So, yeah, I could see that. And Cole said that he feels like they're kind of that next wave of Michigan running backs, kind of a tandem there. And I could see that happening down the road. But they got a long way to go to turn out to be a duo like Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. And nobody should expect them to be that. Those are way too high of expectations. But the fact that they're shooting for it, I think, is a really good sign. They both have different skill sets like Blake and Donovan that can complement each other. And they both could play on the field together at the same time. So I think it's a pretty apt comparison.
Yeah, and I think the way that they keep building this offensive line, both through augmenting the roster through the transfer portal, and then, we just see what the offensive line recruiting has looked like of late. They're going to put themselves in a position to keep kind of doing this two-headed monster thing. And they already have good backs. I think if the two best backs on the roster leave, I think you're in good shape moving forward with guys like Cabana and Hall. And, don't forget about CJ Stokes too. I mean, that's a guy that showed some juice last year. You've got Jordan Marshall coming in next year's recruiting class. I mean, I like the pieces. And as far as Cole Cabana goes, I mean, he's a guy that I could see him being anything from, what Chris Evans was for Michigan to what Donovan Edwards is now. And again, different types of players, but he's a guy that he was a track star. And I think that he's made physical strides over the last year or so. And, another, both, for all that's been said about these, the Mike Hart the Mike Hart on the recruiting trail, these evaluations, I mean, Cole Cabana looks like he could be a guy that has some sort of role as early as this year. Benjamin Hall, I think that I don't know if he has a role this season, but he looks like a guy that you're not gonna, soil yourself if you have to put him into a game this year for a couple carries. So, yeah. And Shab Fam says here, Blake Corum equals thunder and lightning. Love you guys. A super chat from him. Thank you, Shab Fam. Yeah, I just feel like I like that it looks, again, it's another thing where you don't want to take it for granted. I mean, there's a scenario in play where both Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are round 1, round 2 type of guys next year. So don't take that for granted. That's hard to do, especially when Michigan hasn't, been putting out high-end skilled players to the NFL. But this is all sustainable, man. I mean, all of these guys have some juice to them. And I think they're being coached by a guy in Mike Hart who develops backs as good as anyone in the country. I mean, just Hassan Haskins, the strides he made in his vision and his decisiveness, just in that final year at Michigan that's among one of the great coaching jobs I've ever seen. And we're seeing it with Blake Corum. I suspect we're going to see more of it with Donovan Edwards. I think there are times where he's still kind of learning how to play running backs, more of an offensive weapon right now. But yeah, I trust the hands that are on the steering wheel right now. And again, it's hard to project who can be what, but they've got the horses, they've got the lotto tickets, I'll say, to scratch off the ticket. And you're probably going to have something that you're proud of in a couple of years.